First off, I want to thank the grace of heaven and the virtues of the masters, the mercy of the grand predecessors, transmitting masters, and everyone here today. Today's topic: surviving the end times. It's not meant to be an alarmist, an alarming topic here, but yeah, the end times. You know, some people have a certain mental picture of what the end times is like. You know, the apocalypse, the end of the world. But actually, we are in the end times already. Last week I mentioned the 3 stages or 3 ages of Dharma, right? So we're now in the 3rd age, which is the Dharma ending age. This happens to overlap with the White Era in the Tao that we talk about the White Era that we're in now, which is the time of universal propagation of the Tao. But some of the scriptures, they're saying that, we're actually near the end of this White Era. The White Era is 10,800 years, but we're not actually near the end of this whole 10,800 years. We're near the end of the mandate for the propagation of the Tao, for this universal propagation of the Tao. So, and that will basically correspond or coincide with, the so-called apocalypse. Okay, but we'll get to that. But yeah, if you're here today to hear what my prediction is, I don't have one. So okay, all right. Okay, so this is a rough timeline of the past 100 years or so. The transition between the red and white eras. Okay, so I just kind of pointing out a few major events, you can say worldwide events. So like World War I, where you have greater than 17 million people died. The 1918 flu pandemic, which killed over 50 million. So this is basically right now, it's been a little bit over 100 years since that. And then the passing of the 17th Patriarch in 1925. Then we had World War II, where even more people died, more than 60 million, and that also the dropping of the atomic bomb there. Okay. And then 1947, our 18th Patriarch passed away, returned to heaven. There was another pandemic. I think there were a couple of them in the 50s and 60s. They killed, more than 2 million people. In 1975, our matriarch passed away, and then in 1995, our grand predecessor passed away. Now, so basically, our grand predecessor, God had assigned or said that he has to temporarily take on this mandate that the patriarchs had. Okay, so he kind of representing the matriarch or the patriarchs, but then he passed away in 1995. So since then we have not had any, and then currently today, of course, there's the coronavirus pandemic, and I only listed kind of the major things that basically there's 2009, there was a swine flu, which killed about 500,000, but we already exceeded that in this coronavirus pandemic. So what's next? All right, so basically since the passing of our grand predecessor, we've been living on borrowed time, basically, in terms of this mandate to propagate the Tao. Right? The patriarchal mandate has ended with the passing of our divine matriarch and grand predecessor. So there's a saying that Tao is made available to people during times of calamities. And certainly we've seen plenty of calamities during the past 100 years. Right? So Tao is kind of a balance to the calamities, if you will. Okay, so we are in a period of this universal propagation of Tao, which means that the converse is also true, which means that when the Tao is available, there are also calamities, right? So basically, they kind of go together. When, especially now, when the Tao is kind of made available to everyone, the when the Tao is available, there are also going to be calamities. So the two kind of come together, go together. Okay. So when we look at the last 100 years or so, we see that the world has experienced many great calamities, both natural and man-made, man-caused, that have killed many millions of people. The major calamity of the right. Okay, so if we look at the three time periods in the Tao, where is the green, the red, and the white. The red era is defined by fire as the major calamity. And so you can say fire, that's war, right? The mass killings with those weapons. And it could, I guess you could say it might be, you can have natural fire disasters too, like, wildfires, things like that, or fires that are caused by earthquakes. Okay, okay, but the major calamity of the white era is defined by wind. Okay, so we see that you can say, or from at least from my point of view, I would say wind is something that's invisible. Okay, you don't see it. So there's this invisible force that's creating some calamities, and pandemics, I would say, is one of those. The spreading of diseases. Nuclear weapons, of course, is also another one, and it's actually kind of a combination of wind and fire. Of course, and you also have the storms, typhoons, cyclones, tornadoes, all these things that are happening. That's a more direct interpretation of wind. Okay, so we'll continue to have all sorts of calamities, including water, which is from the green period, in floods, tsunamis, and the earthquakes that cause them. So basically, it encompasses all sorts of natural types of disasters. Okay, so what is next? Obviously, this pandemic is probably not going to go away at the end of this year. I don't know. It may continue next year, and who knows what's going to come following. All right. Okay. So the next great calamity, yeah, okay, I don't know what the next great one is, but, we're going to have all these three types, which is basically any kind of natural disasters and also man-made ones, okay? There are, in the white era, there's 81 calamities, okay? It's 9 times 9, yeah, it comes from our hand seal, okay, but I won't get into that here, but that 80, yeah, okay, so I don't think anyone's counting, and we don't know how to count, these 81, how many have there been so far? I can't tell you, but we know that 81st, that last one, 81, is the big kahuna, okay, so that's the big one. That's the one that's going to bring about the apocalypse, the end of the world, so to speak. Okay, so, and we can kind of guess maybe, what what that might be, what can cause that kind of great calamity. Okay, now, okay, so yeah, and then so that will also be, when that happens, basically, you can say there are two things. That could probably be the end of the universal propagation of the Tao. Okay, so at that point, people who want to receive the Tao, it may be too late. And also, that would be the time when Maitreya shows up, okay? To kind of, you can say lead the world of, whoever is left behind, okay? So, and it should all be cultivators, all right? Okay, so this calamity, this great calamity, okay, and the scriptures, they all talk about this great calamity. Even Laomu God scriptures, mention this as the biggest thing that's going to happen in this world. And so there's this, it's called this Gangfeng, okay, so this is, in the Chinese, that's what it is. If you look this up, it says it's strong winds. Yeah, it's definitely strong, very strong winds. In the Taoist term, it means winds in the Empyrean, which is the highest heaven, or heaven of the fire element. So that's kind of interesting. It's the wind maybe that carries the element of fire. for example. So, like I mentioned earlier, the nuclear weapons, it's wind and fire. Okay, so maybe that's what that means, right? So yeah, all right. Okay. Then okay, so also, if you look at that Chinese character, Gang, it you can kind of, it's like four winds. Okay, so basically it's like four. Okay, the top part is four, and then the bottom part is corners. You can say the four corners. So, this is from. There's a reference to this in the Bible. Okay, in the book of Revelation, it says, "After I saw four angels standing at the four corners of the earth, holding back the four winds of the earth." Okay, so the four winds. So that's kind of referencing this. "To prevent any wind from blowing on the land or on the sea or on any tree. Then I saw another angel coming up from the east, having the seal of the living God. He called out in a loud voice to the four angels who had been given power to harm the land and the sea. Do not harm the land or the sea or the trees until we put a seal on the foreheads of the servants of our God." Okay, so it's kind of basically what I was just saying. That living the living angel with the seal of, or that angel coming from the east having the seal of the living God, you can say that basically refers to Jigong Living Buddha. Okay, he's got the mandate to propagate the Tao, to transmit the Tao during this time, and so that's this Tao, receiving the Tao is the seal of the living God. Okay, so or he has that mandate. And so basically, his mission during this White Era is to try to propagate the Tao. Obviously, it's through the people, us, to propagate the Tao to people as much as we can, to try to save as many people as possible. Because basically, when that's done, or when that final calamity hits, that Gangfeng, the four winds hits, it'll be too late probably. Okay, so now, so yeah, obviously, when will this happen? It's anyone's guess. But unfortunately, we've had all these calamities up until now, up through now, and it's heavens. You could say it's heavens trying to hint or trying to warn us about the pending apocalypse. Okay, and if people don't take the warning seriously enough and don't change their ways, they don't receive the Tao, they don't cultivate, then there's no it's inevitable that 81st calamity will strike. Okay, so yeah, so a lot of times people are they're only forced. You can say they're forced to do something when something bad happens. So anytime there's some kind of calamity, then people say, "Oh yeah, I believe, and then but after it's over and then things go back to normal, then that's it. Then they kind of forget about it for the most part. Okay, for most people, but the thing is, we don't know how many calamities there are left before the big one, and so the people who wait until that 81st, it's going to be too late. All right, so that's why we have a job to do, is to try to obviously we can't force anyone. It's only those who believe, really, who have that faith, will really save themselves. All right, okay. So how do we survive these times? Yeah, not just that 81st calamity, but the calamities that we are encountering today. So the Buddhists, they tell us, we have to become vegan or vegetarian. Basically, it really should be vegan, but I'll talk about each of these. We have to ferry people, perform true merits, okay, because we have karma, and therefore we need to do as much as we can to kind of, reduce our karmic debts. Establish temples. You can say that that's also implying. Well, we obviously, people can establish family temples, or this, even better than that is that you go to places that don't have temples and you establish temples there. Okay, so that would be like pioneering Tao as well. And then reciting the Maitreya Sutra, or the Maitreya, yeah, that's the sutra that the 17th patriarch, after he had passed away, gone back to heaven, and he came back. And well, he kind of manifested himself through through an ordinary person. Well, it was a cultivator, but through that, you can say special, I don't know, channeling or something. He basically recited or gave this sutra. Okay, and so this is one of the sutras of this white era that we're in, and so that's why it's an important sutra for us in this white era, and we can recite this, and this can help us too. And then we use the three treasures, heart dharma, when we need to. Okay, and then also another thing is to grasp the golden thread. Okay, so this is something that we shouldn't be running around to various places seeking various, say, practices. All right. Okay, so now let me just talk about each of these then. Okay, so why talking about a vegan lifestyle? Let's see. Okay, so these are kind of the typical three reasons why people tend to become vegan or vegetarian, right? For health reasons, okay, for the environment, and for the animals. Okay, so these are kind of common reasons, and then I would add to that, basically, it's unnatural for us humans to eat meat. Okay, so I'll be talking about each of these too, and then karma. That's something that obviously maybe most people, if they're scientifically minded and they don't believe in karma, then they won't believe in this. But from our point of view, we know there's karma, and then also ultimately compassion. Now compassion, I list that separately from animal cruelty because I'll explain that, because the animal cruelty tends to be a little bit more narrow. All right. So now, in terms of why vegan as opposed to vegetarian, I say vegan. It really should be vegan. Now, there was a scripture from 2009, and it was kind of put into this, I guess, like a book, whatever, a booklet. It's called "The Pure Rises Up." Okay, the Qingzi Sangsen. Okay, so it's by mostly. The scripture is by Zhao Jing, who is the you can say the kitchen god. Okay, so the saint of the hearth, right? Now he's saying that eggs and milk are impure, that we should not eat them, right? And he also says, talks about processed foods, that we shouldn't eat those too either. And definitely he says that lectures and temple hosts. The temple hosts, the ones who are taking the vegetarian vow or the vegan vow, should definitely not eat eggs and milk, right? For those who took the vegetarian vow and above, it is best not to eat these things. So yeah, actually, we call it vegetarian vow, but really we should say vegan vow. It's more accurate. Okay. Holy Teacher also added that we should avoid any animal products or byproducts. So basically be vegan. So he also mentioned like honey, right? So any product coming from animals or related to animals. So it's not just eating. So like using, like leather, we should not use leather. So that's being vegan, right? And so basically what the reason is that. Because as long as there is some exploitation of the animals, that there will be karma. right? So you say, okay, the cows, you get the milk from the cows. You're not killing the cows to get the milk, but you are exploiting them, and definitely they're suffering, and they didn't, and they didn't want to give up that milk for us, our consumption. And the same for like bees, right, with honey. So this is all exploitation of the animals, and so there will be karma, definitely karma. I mean, it's not as bad as killing them, but there is karma, and we want to avoid as much of this karma as possible, because any karma that we have can become an obstacle for us, and it can become a problem for us in the future. All right. Okay, so let's talk about health. There's a lot of hormones, right, in the meat and dairy, like milk and cheese. Probably even eggs. Okay, so these are hormones that are injected in or given to these animals in their feed, or injected basically to have them grow faster, because after all, these are businesses that want to make money, and so the sooner you can get the product to market, the sooner you have something, you can get revenue. All right, so that's what it's all about, right? It's just these animals no longer are considered living beings. They're just commodities, objects, okay, things that can make a profit. So it's sad. And anyways, there's also antibiotics that are used, right? So apparently, at least 50% of antibiotics are used in animals. Okay, so if you think about this, today we have a problem of the antibiotic-resistant bacteria. That comes from the overuse of antibiotics. Okay, and you can say the abuse or misuse of them. Partly it's also maybe from people misusing them, but it's a lot of them, because these antibiotics that are used in animals are very similar to the ones that we as humans use on ourselves. So that's a problem. And then BGH, which is a bovine growth hormone, that allows the milk, the dairy cows to produce a lot more milk. If you see pictures of these cows, and they have these udders that are like distended, I mean, it looks painful. I mean, because they're so big that they have to be milked pretty much all day, and so this is not good. But these growth hormones, okay, so there are also probably growth hormones added to like chickens and other animals. These growth hormones, when you eat the meat and the dairy, whatever, you're going to get these growth hormones. There might be trace amounts, but if you drink a lot of milk, for example, kids drink a lot of milk in this country, and if you look at them, they grow up very fast, and they also reach puberty very fast. So there is a connection here. It's not there. I don't know why they don't talk about that, but certainly the industry doesn't want you to know about these things. But anyways, there's also other types of hormones and toxins that are generated by the body itself. So like adrenaline, right? So can you imagine an animal? They know they're about to be killed. Then obviously the adrenaline starts pumping in the body. And once they're killed, that adrenaline is still in the body, plus all the other waste products that are in the body that they can't pass out through the kidneys, right? So that still remains in the flesh, and so there are it's trace amounts, of course, but you're still getting that. So you're accumulating as you eat more and more. You're accumulating it into your own body, right? And then there's also the issue of bacterial contamination. You hear about these meat recalls, right, because of Salmonella, E. coli, Listeria, or whatever the bacteria are, because these can also cause people to get sick or even die from them. So there are all sorts of things, health issues with eating meat. Not just, of course, there's also, the cholesterol, that type of issue as well. All right. Okay. Processed meats. So these are basically the meats, the parts of the animal that they can't sell as cuts of meat. Okay, so and so this could include, I don't know, the entrails, the guts, and other parts that it would otherwise be wasted. Like I said, these are these are business people doing these things, and they want to profit, and so they want to make as much profit as they can. So make use of they don't want to waste anything, and so they created something called processed meats, right? So hot dogs, for example, Spam, deli meats, sausages. These are all processed meats, right? So they can include lots of stuff that you really don't want to know. The FDA also allows, because in these plants, these factories, it's not entirely clean, right? You could have hair falling in there, maybe even, fingernails. You can have all sorts of stuff, even flies, insects, because it all gets ground up anyway, so you can't see it. But it's in there, believe me. And that's why they all add all sorts of, chemicals into these processed meats to preserve it. They add a lot of sodium, all that kind of stuff. So it's all bad stuff. The WHO, the WHO, right? They said they classify processed meats as a carcinogen. So definitely that it will cause cancer if you eat too much of it. And then also red meats are potential carcinogens as well. Okay, so and typically people who eating meat get colorectal cancer. So either part of our large intestines and rectal area where you potentially get cancer. That's because the meat, well, obviously it's not just the meat, there's some of the chemicals in there, but also because, well, I'll talk about the physiology as well, but next, all right, after that. Okay. Now, this is, okay, so there was a big study done in China, I think it was in the 1970s by Dr. Esselstyn. Says, people who eat a whole food, plant-based, vegan diet, avoiding all animal products, including beef, pork, poultry, fish, eggs, cheese, and milk, and reducing their intake of processed foods and refined carbohydrates, will escape, reduce, or reverse the development of numerous diseases. Okay, so that's, there are always people who will deny this, and maybe they say, oh, point to some other study that says something else. That's the problem with, kind of science. There's always ways around it. You can, depending on what kind of answer you're looking for, you can always design a study to get that answer. Okay, but anyways, this is one of the more well-known and more, you can say, authoritative study. Now, the other thing is meat is acidic in the body. Okay, so there foods, you can classify them as being acidic or alkaline. There are probably very few foods that are really neutral, but so either acidic or alkaline. Now, in the body, our body should be slightly alkaline. Okay, so not neutral, but a little bit to the alkaline side. But definitely it should not be on the acidic side, because when it's on the acidic side, cancer cells, they love that environment. Okay, they love being in that kind of acidic environment. Therefore, if you eat all these acidic foods like meat, then that will enable cancer cells to grow more quickly. Okay, so therefore it only makes sense to eat a plant-based diet to maintain the proper pH balance in the body. Okay. Now, there are also, like grains in general are also acidic. They're not as acidic probably as meat, but in terms of plants, there's also they're not all alkaline. Okay, so they also have acidic plants as well. So so we have to kind of balance it, make sure that we don't eat too much acidity from those types of foods. Okay, so I also want to mention, junk food, even though it could be vegan, right? It's still junk food, right? We are what we eat. So we have to make sure that we don't eat the junk food, fried stuff, fried foods, too much of the sugar, white sugar, salt, right? These things are not good for us. Okay, so we have to eat a more balanced plant-based diet to make sure we get all the nutrients that we need. Especially, since if we are eating a plant-based diet, we have to be a little bit more, you can say, aware of what we're eating, because we may not get all the nutrients that we need if we don't eat a balanced diet. Okay, so basically we may have to take supplements for vitamin D, for example, or vitamin B12. Those are kind of two that aren't readily found in plants, okay, in a plant-based diet. But if you drink like a lot of the soy milks or plant-based milks that are fortified, they usually, or some of them are fortified with like vitamin D, then you're okay. You probably don't need to take a supplement. Okay, and then so basically we should eat. So a balance would be, eat the 5 colors, right? The 5 colors, basically black, red, yellow, green, and white. So all these types of different, this falls into the 5 element theory, okay, and that also tells you, what each color, well, it's not just color, but color, shape, and taste, how that helps, what areas what does that help in your body. Okay, so but that would be another topic. All right. Okay. So okay, but besides you can say the physical health, right? Health is not just being free from illness or weakness, but also to attain peace and beauty in body, mind, and spirit, right? So we cannot just feed our body right, but at the same time we're still polluting our mind and defiling our spirit. Okay, so what does that mean? Basically, although vegan, so we say when vegan lifestyle, right? That's the diet and the lifestyle, the living. But in the Tao, the vegan, you can say the vegan ethic, if you will, includes what comes out of the mouth and what is also in our mind. So basically, we shouldn't say, things that are improper or not good, or, etc. I mean, right? We talked about some of these things before. And also, what's in our mind, that we have to be pure as well. So basically, our mouth has to be pure, our mind has to be pure. Okay, so because now is the time when you can say, because our patriarchs are no longer here, there's no one who has sufficient virtue and merit to be able to kind of protect us directly, right? So there are a lot of asuras, or I don't know, you call them demons or devils, whatever, and also the karmic debt collectors, right? The ones who we owe the karmic debts to, they're working together to get revenge. Okay, so they're working together now. So our thoughts and mindset is of the utmost importance. By practicing the precepts, so we have to practice precepts, follow the temple rules and regulations, right? Then the asuras will not be able to attack us, right? But as long as we give rise to an improper thought, then they will have an opening to attack. So that's something that we have to keep in mind. So that's why it's not just what we're eating, okay? That when we take that vegetarian or that vegan vow, it's not just what we're eating, okay? It includes these things: what comes out of the mouth and what's in our mind. All right. Okay. All right. So then the environment aspect. It's very wasteful in terms of the resource use. So natural resources and grain used to support one meat eater is enough to support 14 vegetarians. And it would probably be more for vegans, but it takes about 6 anywhere from 6 to 16 pounds of grain to produce 1 pound of meat. So it's very inefficient. If you want to get your protein, many plants have lots of proteins, especially like the beans, legumes, that kind of stuff. And, you can get them a lot more efficiently than getting it from meat. Okay. And then meat production also causes 18% of greenhouse gas emissions. And that's actually, more than just the transportation industry. Okay. So that's a significant amount. Also, water, more than half of water consumption, right, and like 80 to 90% of farmland is actually used to raise animals for food. So if you think about that, there are a lot of starving people in the world, or people who don't get enough, and food. And yet here we have all this farmland, all this, you can say, the resources being used to feed the animals instead. Okay, so 4,000 gallons are needed to produce 1 day's food for a meat eater, 1,200 gallons for an ovo-lacto-vegetarian, so that's a vegetarian who eats dairy, has dairy, and also eggs. But it only takes 300 gallons for a vegan. So that's a big difference. From a vegan, it's only 300 gallons, and a meat eater, needs 4,000 gallons. So that's more than 10 times difference. So wasting food. Now, on water. And water, fresh water, as we know, is actually, maybe we don't realize it in this country because it's readily available, or in most developed countries. But in other places, it's fresh water, drinkable, potable water is hard to come by. And in fact, one of the problems caused by global warming is, this availability of fresh water, it could be at risk. And that could be a cause for wars can be fought over that. Okay, but also livestock production, causes increased erosion of the land, more pesticide use, more antibiotic use, right? Nitrogen and phosphorus discharge into the water. Animals, also all these animals that are raised for food, they produce 130 times the amount of waste that humans produce. So think about that. How much garbage do we produce? And yet they produce 130 times that amount. And what happens on these factory farms, they have these cesspools. Okay, the cesspools are used to collect all their waste, the animal, their waste. And what's happened is those waste it's very toxic. They have, some dangerous bacteria that grow in there. And so you see that when that happens, basically when there's a typhoon or hurricane that comes and there's a storm that causes flooding, and these cesspools kind of overflow into the rivers and lakes. And you see that, all the fish, any kind of life, aquatic life in those waters, they die because it's so toxic. Okay, so that is basically how bad it is. And it's not just bad for them, it's bad for the people who live near there. They say basically, the air is also bad coming from the toxic cesspools. Okay, and those people, because for one, there's a bad smell, and then two, the air is terrible, and some of those people they get cancer, and it could be related to that. All right. Okay. But anyway, so environment, that's a big issue as well. If everyone went plant-based, then there will be less demand on, it would be less destruction to the environment. If you look at the Amazon rainforest, for example, right? There's I forget. It's like how many football fields are burned down, are cleared every minute, and most of that, probably over 90% is used for animal grazing. Okay, so that's very sad. All right. Okay, so animal cruelty. Animals are sentient beings, right? And so, they feel, right? So the question is not can they reason, nor can they talk, but can they suffer? Okay, so basically, animals can suffer. And so people, they say, well, okay, yeah, we need to be more humane in our treatment of the animals, right? Because they see, yeah, these videos of what goes on in the factory farms, or even like in the slaughterhouses. Sometimes there's abuse of the animals, okay, and people, they're rightly upset about that, and so they say, as long as so they do actually have or the U.S. has some laws that say that the animals have to be somewhat humanely treated, but of course it's not very either not always enforced, or in fact, I mean, it's not a very strict law anyways. But so some people, you could say that why I said I listed compassion separately from this animal cruelty, because for some people, as long as the animal is treated well, they're not mistreated. So for example, free range, right? Free range, or where the animals are not confined and all that, and they're on a farm, and they're willing to eat the meat from those animals because they weren't cruelly treated. But so that's why I have to say, talk about compassion, which is why do you want to kill them in the first place? Okay, so but anyways, yeah. So it's not just also what we the eating, for the food, but fur is very cruel. This is the animals are skinned. Sometimes they're skinned alive, so that's very sad when you see this. It really makes you can say it can make me angry to see that people do this to the animals. All right. Okay. Again, this is, in the Ten Commandments, it says, thou shalt not kill, right? This is something that people tend to ignore or interpret in a way that's allows them to eat meat, okay? So, all right. And then, like I said, not killing means that we're expressing our benevolence. So if we are still eating meat, we're not benevolent. We don't have that compassion. Okay, so I mean, I have to say that for anyone, even there are many Daokin, many cultivators who are not vegan yet or not vegetarian, and I have to say that they don't have the compassion. I'm sorry. I mean. To become a bodhisattva, you have to have that compassion. It has to be no killing. Okay, so that's basically what I wanted to say there. Okay, so I include some quotes here. So like Leonardo da Vinci, everyone probably has heard of, right? Truly, man is the king of beasts, for his brutality exceeds them. Right? We live by the death of others. We are burial places. And he says, he has since an early age, stopped eating meat. And the time will come when men such as I will look upon the murder of animals as they now look upon the murder of men. So, yeah, the killing of animals really is no different than the killing of people. Animals also, they have families, okay? So, so by killing them, maybe you're destroying the family. I mean, it's really not much different than humans, okay? So we have to look at it that way. We are basically the living graves of murdered beasts slaughtered to satisfy our appetites, right? How can we hope in this world to attain the peace that we are so anxious for? So why is there never any peace in this world? If people wake up to this idea that, or this principle that, yeah, you know, if we kill animals, then we're gonna kill people too. So people need to wake up to that, right? Animals have families. I mean, you know, it's. I mean, you know, if you can look, if everyone can meet these animals, right? You know, meet them in person, and then, you know, see if they can go ahead and eat their meat. You know, that then, you know, really, those who can really have no conscience, I think. But anyways, okay, so. Mencius says, so is the superior man affected towards animals, that having seen them alive, he cannot bear to see them die. Having heard their dying cries, he cannot bear to eat their flesh. In fact, you know, if you take an infant, a baby, or an infant child, and you put in front of them, let's say, a carrot and a rabbit. Well, maybe a rabbit's too big, but maybe like let's say a baby chick. You know, which do you think they'll grab and eat? I think they'll try the carrot. I mean, they're not going to grab the living animal and try to eat it. Okay, so it's not natural. It's not built in. It's not something that we would normally do. Okay, so but also, yeah, especially, so we need to kind of become aware. If you haven't, you know, if you're not vegetarian and you haven't seen any of the videos, and you go to YouTube, you can search around. Meet Your Meat is one of them that you know, show you what's going on in these factory farms and slaughterhouses. You really would lose your appetite. Okay, so for meat, and so really you should expose yourself to that, and don't hide from it. Because, you know, if we really want to show our compassion, then we really need to see the truth and change what you know, how we behave. Okay. All right. So, like I said, it's unnatural to eat meat. We can talk about from the physiology side, right? Our teeth are for cutting and grinding, not for tearing. We don't have the big canines that carnivores do. Our tongue is smooth, not raspy. If you have ever touched the tongue of a cat, for example. I don't know, I'm not sure about dogs, but any cat, you know, or the you know, lions and tigers, you know, their tongue is very raspy, and that you could say this for two reasons. One is to be able to remove the fur from their catch, from their prey, or and also to, you know, to kind of like pull in that flesh as they're chewing it. Okay. Our saliva, human saliva, has enzymes to break down carbohydrates, not to break down the protein in the meats. Okay, so it's designed, and then our stomach acid is weak compared to carnivores, and also our intestines are much longer than our body, and they're very convoluted. Okay, so it's not smooth, and this is because, you know, if we eat plants, there's a lot of fiber, right? In fact, meat does not have any fiber. So plants have a lot of fiber, and so that we need this long intestines to kind of process, to deal with that. In fact, carnivores, they need a short intestine, a smooth one, so that the meat, the flesh that they're eating, whatever is left of it, you know, will pass through very quickly. You know, so that, and the problem is when humans eat the meat, right? It doesn't pass through very quickly, and so it stays in the intestines for a long time, and therefore that's why you have the greater risk of the colon cancer, for example. Okay, and that's why they say, you know, you have to eat a lot of fiber to kind of clean it out, kind of like sweep out your intestines. So okay, so, and there's also other things like we don't have claws like the carnivores do. All right, now speaking of unnatural to eat meat, I don't know if you guys remember, maybe it was, I don't know, 40, I don't know how long ago, like 30, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, that they were feeding cows who are, you know, cows are herbivores, right? They only eat plants. and they fed them meat. Basically, they forced them to become carnivores. I mean, cannibals. They eat their own. Because again, the cows, when they cut it up, they can only sell, the meats and some parts of it. There are parts left over that are not they can't sell. And so what are they going to do about that? Well, make that into feed for the cows to eat. Well, that causes a problem. If you remember, there was something called mad cow disease. Okay, and that's the result of them eating basically the brain tissue or the spinal cord tissue of other cows. Now, obviously, they didn't know that that's what they were eating, but it caused these diseases. And this disease is very scary because if people ate the cows that had the disease, they could also get it. In cows, it's called BSE, which is bovine spongiform encephalitis, but encephalopathy. In humans, it appears as a form of CJD, which is Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, which actually some of these tribes in like New Guinea or wherever that they are cannibals, they have that disease. Some are, those who, again, eating the brain tissue or the spinal cord causes that of the same species, I guess. It causes that kind of disease. So this is kind of a hint from heaven, you can say, or from nature, that this is an abomination. You can't do that. You can't eat this stuff. All right. Okay, so now we get to karma. Right, all sentient beings have feelings, right, and a soul, or we say Buddha nature. Okay, the Lankavatara Sutra says, since the beginning, all sentient beings are related to each other by karma. Because of this karmic relationship, we should not eat meat. What goes around comes around. It's a man, there's a saying, it's a dog-eat-dog world. Well, but it's really a man-eat-man world. Okay, so it's just that, we don't think of the animals as being people, but yet they are the reincarnations of people. So we're just eating other people in a different form, that's all. So here, the Chinese character for meat or flesh, ro, okay? So it's made up of, there are two parts, the man, okay? So there are two of those, and then there's the mouth. Well, that mouth is actually open, okay? So it's, a person is swallowing, is eating other people, all right? Okay, so let's see. Oh, okay. So there was this monk, right? This monk, he passed by this. There's a banquet going on at this restaurant. Okay, this is in ancient times. Okay, so this monk, he walks by and he sees this banquet. And so what he made up this little poem, I guess. He says, grandson is marrying grandmother. Relatives are being cooked in the pot. Pig and sheep are sitting at the table. Son is beating a drum made of his father's hide. Okay, so this monk, he could see that, the animals, the meat that they were eating came from animals that were reincarnated. Basically, their family, their relatives. And he sees that the grandson is marrying the grandmother. Okay, so apparently the grandmother had reincarnated as this girl whose this grandson is marrying. So anyways, this reincarnation stuff is very scary. So people have to understand the law of cause and effect, basically, and karmic justice. Right? People are doomed to continue making the same mistakes and suffering consequences over and over again, lifetime after lifetime. Nature is absolutely fair and just. We don't see it that way because we don't see the karma or the cause of the justice or consequence that is the result. Most people would not take kindly to being injured or killed by someone else. If people cannot let go of the emotions of anger, hatred, and vengeance, then they are doomed to repeat the cycle of killing and suffering. This is why all the Buddhas, saints, prophets, sages advise people to be loving and forgiving. Only through love and forgiveness can we break the cycle, right? So we have to let go. We have to stop this craziness. Sorry. Yeah, eating the flesh of man. Okay. So, so what about this, like this coronavirus, right? We see these scriptures recently that mention, yeah, this, like this coronavirus seems to be a result of, everyone killing, too many killing of animals, eating of the meat. Okay. And so, yeah, that's very interesting. That's from a karma perspective. Now, if you look at this coronavirus, it also spells out carnivorous. Okay, so I don't know. Some of you probably seen this. So, this is an anagram. Basically, is this a coincidence? Probably not. Given that what the scriptures say, so. Whether or not we get infected or even die if we do get infected, what does coronavirus have to do with me? Okay, so why do we have this pandemic? Many pandemics have zoonotic origins, which means that the virus comes from animals originally. Okay, and so basically, could this be some kind of revenge from the animals, right? I mean, we kill billions. I mean, just in the U.S. alone, it's over 10 billion animals a year. So around the world, it's tens of billions. I mean, maybe, close to 100 billion animals killed every year. Think of all that killing. So sometimes words are very interesting, right? They have this hidden message. So is this just a coincidence? Yeah, maybe, maybe not. Okay. So what's the result of killing animals, right? So this is another. Countless years have gone by with food in the bowl. Complaints are as deep as the sea, and hatred is hard to smooth out. To know why we have war on this planet, right? Listen to the slaughterhouse, right? The screams at midnight. Okay, so this is a monk who said that. Basically, ever since humans have been roaming this planet and eating flesh, there have been conflicts among humans. What is the cause of these conflicts? If you can see things objectively, then you will discover that these conflicts are deeply rooted in karma, right? So the slaughterhouse, yeah. If you see the killing and the blood and guts, it'll probably make you sick. Just hearing the screaming of the animals, that will make you lose your appetite. As a child, when I was in Okinawa, we lived kind of near this small little slaughterhouse, and I walked by once, and I heard this screaming, screaming of a hog, a pig, and I remember I see this pig with an axe, embedded in its belly, and unfortunately, I did not that. I have to admit that I did not become vegetarian right away, but that image kind of stayed stuck in my mind, and so when I see that, it's like, oh man, I should have, I don't know why I didn't really react to it in that way before, but anyways, there's a saying that says, if slaughterhouses had glass walls, then no one would want to eat meat, or at least most people. Okay. So it is the law of cause and effect that determines our fate in this life and the next. As was mentioned before, right? It is the anger, hatred, and seeking of vengeance that results in killing and suffering. Animals too have a soul, for they are also sentient beings. Therefore, the soul or spirit of an animal that is killed will also harbor this anger, hatred, and vengeance. This will lead the animal spirit to being reborn in the future to fulfill this karmic justice. Okay. You probably have heard of Pythagoras. If you in your math class, you know the Pythagorean theorem. Okay, so as long as men massacre animals, they will kill each other. Indeed, who sows the seeds of murder and pain cannot reap joy and love. Okay, so it's not just this. I mean, even the Greeks and some Western philosophers, they made that connection. Okay. Emerson, who's a poet and philosopher in U.S., right? You have just dined, and however scrupulously the slaughterhouse is concealed in the graceful distance of miles, there is complicity. So there is still this guilt, this karma, that even though we aren't doing the killing, there is that karma, there's that connection to it if we eat the meat. All right. So ultimately, really, I think the highest reason, to not eat meat is compassion. Humanity, right, is the distinguishing characteristic of man. As embodied in man's conduct is called the path of truth. So Mencius said that. It's basically, we can't stop at just the humane treatment of animals, but respecting their lives as well. Okay, the lives of all sentient beings. We cannot say, treat it well, and we can slaughter it and still eat it. That's not true compassion. Okay, so again, the golden rule, right? What you do not want done to others, do not do to yourself, do not do to others, right? Or the other way around, do unto others as you would have others do unto you, right? Darwin, right? Charles Darwin, where the theory of evolution comes from, the love for all living creatures is the most noble attribute of man. Oh, so he's saying that. Thomas Edison says, nonviolence leads us to the highest ethics, which is the goal of all evolution. Until we stop harming all other living beings, we are still savages. Yeah. Okay. And Guanyin Bodhisattva, or Buddha, says, compassion is the greatest force in the universe, and it is. And so if we want to effect change, then we need to have that compassion, right? That's the four, right, immeasurable minds, right? Compassion is part of that. Okay. Now, in the Tao, when we say vegan or vegetarian, we also exclude these pungent vegetables, and also, of course, tobacco. Okay, so but these pungent vegetables, scallion, you have scallion, garlic, leeks, chives, shallots, and kind of the round onions. Okay, so these are basically, you can say they're part of the allium family of plants, or basically onion or garlic family, and they're all related. All right. There's also another one called this asafoetida. Okay, so that's another name for some of these. There is a specific plant that's called asafoetida, but it's related to these as well. Okay, so that you probably don't encounter that much here, but in India, they have that, and so that's also excluded. Basically, they're all very similar. It's said that when you eat them raw, right, they cause irritability of temper, and so we're more likely to get angry. When eaten cooked, they basically affect our emotions or passions, and so they're considered like aphrodisiacs. And so as a cultivator, obviously, we want to exclude, we're trying to get rid of anger. We're trying to get rid of something that's going to cause us to arouse our emotions or desires. So we want to eliminate these things as well. Also, scallions or onions, they harm the kidneys. Okay, they harm basically. This is, you can say, the vitality or the energy, the chi of the kidneys. Garlic harms the heart, the chi, the vitality of the heart. Leeks and chives harms the liver. Shallots harms the spleen, and of course tobacco harms the lungs. And so the pungent odor also, when you eat these, especially if you eat a lot, then it kind of permeates the entire body, right? So it's not just on your breath that you can smell this, but it comes out of your skin too, the pores. When someone who eats a lot of this stuff, and you can kind of smell it from them, even if they don't open their mouth, or even if they had eaten it, a while ago, and it's no longer on their breath. Their body reeks of this smell. This odor is arguably offensive, right? Not only to many people, but also to Buddhas, okay? And also you can say the benevolent spirits. They stay away from this odor. So there's definitely this negative chi or energy in these plants. And so these odors, they drive away the benevolent spirits, keeps the Buddhas away. But they attract the malevolent ones, the asuras. They'll attract these guys, these spirits to you. So that's not good, all right? Okay. Okay, so, the future really is vegan, right? I have no doubt that it is a part of the destiny of the human race in its gradual improvement to leave off eating of animals. This is another philosopher, Thoreau, poet and philosopher. Okay, Albert Einstein, everyone has heard of, I think, says nothing will benefit human health and increase chances for survival of life on Earth as much as the evolution to a vegetarian diet. So even Einstein realized that, hey, this is the only way that we're going to survive in the future. Okay, so this is, I don't know, I say saintly sovereign Guan. I mean, it's Guansen Di Jing. Okay, so he's the warrior Buddha or whatever. Okay, so, but anyways, he says, one day scientific theory will confirm the cause and effect principle that an impure spirit will have difficulty rising up to heaven. Since the beginning, scriptures have stated the world will be transformed into one populated only by vegetarian cultivators. Okay, I urge people to become vegetarian as soon as possible because human and animal souls come from the same source. How can one have the heart to kill and eat one's kin? This is truly pitiful and tragic. Okay, okay, so even in the scriptures they do say that in the future only vegetarians will be left. But not only that, I mean you can kind of say that only those who make this vow made the vows. Okay, let's see. Oh, okay. So, so basically, if we want to be saved, we have to go vegan. So veganism, here's another play on the words, if you will. It also spells out saving me. Okay, so, is this a coincidence too? I don't know. It's a fact that plant-based diet can prevent, treat, and even cure certain diseases, certain cancers. Okay. So, all we have to do is just eat a balanced plant-based diet to stay healthy. We won't be lacking in, any nutrients or strength or anything like that, endurance. In fact, it helps in those areas. There are, these super athletes that are vegan, and they say they are better as a vegan than they were before. And so also we don't want to accumulate any more karmic debts. Okay, so this is how we can be saved. Okay, so now let's continue with the other things that were mentioned. So we have to accumulate true merits as well. Okay, well, we have all these karmic debts from, you can say 60,000 years. Well, the Buddhists say 60,000 years of that we've been, in this world, in this cycle, that we have all sorts of karma and all sorts of karmic debts that we need to pay off. So right now it's the day of reckoning. This white period, this era, the basically the end of days. This is the time when those, like I said, those karmic debt collectors, they want to collect their debts, all of them. So that's why it's so important for us to accumulate true merits. Right? We have to perform them with true sincerity, according to affinity, and without motive, other than to save or benefit others. Okay, so if that's our only motive is to, hey, I want to do it as a benefit to others, to save others, then that's fine. But we shouldn't have other kind of selfish motives. All right. We want to ferry people to receive the Tao. Okay, introduce them to receive the Tao, and then guide them on the path of cultivation once they receive the Tao. So now it doesn't mean that we, in fact, most of the time we're probably not going to be successful in getting people to receive the Tao, but it's the effort. If we are sincere, we put in the sincere effort, and that's what counts. Okay, so that will also be merits, even though they did not receive the Tao. But once they do receive the Tao, we have to continue to kind of guide them, be their mentor, if you will, to on this path of cultivation, to teach them, what. Or hold their hands in to how to cultivate. And then we also have to perform other merits, true merits, anything that can benefit others. Okay, so now after we take that vegan vow, so the vegan part is very important and applies and affects these other ones because merits are affected by whether, if we take the vegan vow, then we can, all the merits that we accumulate, it's not discounted, it's 100%. Okay, so, but if we don't take the vegan vow, these merits are going to be discounted. Maybe we only get one half of it. Okay, so because these debt collectors, they're collecting these debts. Okay, so okay. So if we wish to make it through these calamities, final calamities, right, we also have to accumulate these merits because it's during these calamities that these karmic debt collectors can get their revenge on us, right? So, but we also have to not, besides these external merits, don't forget to cultivate our internal virtues, right? Eliminate the 3 poisons: greed, anger, delusion, okay, and attachments, right? We have to get rid of our bad temper, correct our bad habits, right? So we practice just make sure we practice the precepts and follow all the rules and regulations, and then hopefully, then we'll be fine. Okay, so establish temples. Again, the more temples there are, the more they call these cloud cities. I don't know, Yingchen. Okay, so the more places where sentient beings can take refuge. Okay, so we want to establish temples widely, even if only to make the morning and evening incense offering. Okay, so, but in order to establish temple, you have to have taken the vegan vow. So that's why the vegan vow is kind of like the basis for these other things, and it's like the fundamental step, foundation for further cultivation and getting merits and things like that. Okay, so. And as a bonus, you can go pioneer the Tao somewhere else to set up these temples. Basically, and the temples are not just for us. Okay, so anyone who has that affinity will find their way to the temple to seek shelter, because the temple becomes a sanctuary during these times of calamities, and that is a safe place, safe harbor for sentient beings. Okay, reciting the Maitreya Sutra, True Sutra. Okay, so reciting the sutra every day can dispel the evil tendencies of nearby spirits and clear up karmic hindrances, and we will become more familiar with it and be able to use it in all situations. Again, this is something where it's better if we are vegan or have taken the vegan vow when we're reciting it. Then you can say the merits. Because like today, or these days, we do a lot of these reciting of the sutras and dedicating the merits to someone or whoever needs it. And so again, if we haven't taken the vegan vow, then those merits are reduced, right? So then you have to do more. Okay. The reciting. Okay, so in this sutra, right, there's near the end it says, when you recite it once, it can enhance our natural abilities, of our Buddha nature, open up our mind linked to, you can say like our mind linked to connection to the Buddhas and saints in heaven. Okay, reciting it twice can help us transcend life and death. Reciting it 3 times, or actually 3 times means many times, all the time, can let's see. Then the spirits will be afraid, okay, or the asuras, whatever, they'll be afraid. I'll mention a story here about the sutra. Now there are other sutras that people like to recite, maybe the Heart Sutra, because that's short, but the Heart Sutra is really for wisdom, okay, but there's another sutra, I think it's the Jigong Buddha's Rescue World Sutra or something like that. I don't know. Some people are like to recite that one too, but I don't know when that one came out. But we know that the Maitreya True Sutra came out in the White Era, and so it is the White Era Sutra. And so it is, you can say, is the most effective, probably the most effective sutra during this time. But anyways, when I used to live in California, and because I wasn't really near any temple there, I was kind of off on my own. My mom, she recorded the sutras. Well, she recorded 3 sutras for me. This is one of them, and she sent it to me, and said that I should, or she encouraged me to recite, to memorize these sutras. And so okay, I did, and basically, I mean, it wasn't easy. Okay, so I mean, I didn't, for us, for those who don't recognize the Chinese characters, and at that time, I didn't know the Chinese characters. The only thing I could recite it based on following the sounds and the pinyin. Okay, the pinyin, the Chinese, the phoneticization of the Chinese. And it took me many months to memorize the whole thing. But then it's like, okay, that's fine. And then I would probably maybe recite once a day. And then when I came back, actually it came into use. My mother was then in the hospital in the ICU, and she had been there for a few days. And suddenly something happened. I don't know. Basically, when I went in to see her, she was behaving strangely. Okay, so as I walked up to her, there was another Daokin that was with her there, but actually it was my brother, big brother. He came running out of the ICU saying that mom is saying some crazy stuff, doing something crazy. So I go in there, and my mother is looking at me with these very dark eyes. I mean, they're like black. They're like black, and they're so penetrating. They're like seeing through me, and it was very creepy. And as I got close, then she says, well, she's, because she's in ICU, her arms are restrained, and so and she said, why don't you untie me, and so that I can just walk out of here. And if you don't do that, then you're not my son. When I heard that, I said, well, my mom isn't going to say that. Okay, so I knew that something was wrong. It wasn't my mom, so I thought she was possessed. So then, I don't know if I had to think much about it, but, suddenly I said, I remembered, I should recite the sutra. Okay, so I recited all 3 sutras that I memorized, but especially this one, when I was reciting this Maitreya True Sutra, she would, at the time, then she was, trying to do this something with her hands. Okay, she brought her hands together, and with her index finger, she was trying to point at the first treasure. Okay, so I don't know why she was trying to do that, but as soon as then I start reciting the sutra. And when I recited it, then she would relax. Her hands. She would drop her hands, put her hands down, and so, so I kept reciting these sutras, and so I knew that there was, there's well, I guess I don't know. I guess I had the faith that the sutra would be effective, would do something good, and it did. So it's interesting that my mom encouraged me to recite it, and my first use of it was on her. Okay, so and it was good. So definitely I encourage people to recite it, to learn to be able to memorize it. I mean, because at the time you may not be able to have it handy to be able to read. So yeah, memorize it. Okay. The 3 treasures, yeah, the 3 treasures is not just the knowledge, okay? So definitely, you can use it. I mean, there are many different ways to use it, if you will. I mean, one way is just it's in your life, okay? It's part of you, and you use it in your life, okay? So, but during great calamities, there will be false Maitreyas and teachers, okay? So holy teachers, right? So. And they will appear to lure the cultivators. So we can use the three treasures to, well, obviously we can also use like the sutras, but in this case, probably we need to use the three treasures to clear our mind and to calm ourselves. We close our eyes and concentrate on the center, on the first treasure, to help us differentiate the true from the false. Okay, so yeah, unfortunately, the scriptures, they all say this, that in the future there will be false prophets. Well, in the Bible it says false prophets, right? But for us, it's false Maitreya Buddhas, false Maitreya's, and false holy teachers. Okay, so we have to be careful. Don't be stuck on the forms, right? We have to look beyond the forms. Don't. I mean, we unfortunately, I mean, we've had some kind of experience like this before. Okay, so where people say, oh well, just because they say they are who, what they say, we believe it. We can't just do that. Okay, so we have to be very, very, very careful here. If once we believe them and we follow them, then that's it. Then we're lost. And then so that we definitely have to be very careful about. All right. Grasping. Okay, this is the last one. Grasping the golden thread. Right, the golden thread is the Tao lineage. Right, so you can say from God, or or if you want to go from all the 64 patriarchs. Okay, so through our grand predecessor, our predecessor, and our transmitting master. Okay, so that is how we receive the Tao. Now, so this means, basically, our Tao lineage. So we all, for example, right, in this class here, we have people from the Tao kin from two Tao lineages, but they're all under the grand predecessor. They're under different predecessors, but they're under the same grand predecessors. So it's kind of okay. There's usually there could be like some kind of collaboration, working together among various temples that are, or Tao lineages that are under the same grand predecessor. Okay, but if but there are other grand predecessors as well. So then there would be a little bit more further removed from us. So we shouldn't seek out other temples, in terms of like different, even it's within this lineage, or under the same grand predecessor. If they're a different predecessor, they're technically under a different lineage. We shouldn't just go wherever we please, that would please us. So we should, wherever we receive the Tao under. Now, normally that golden thread, they, after the transmitting master, they'll list the introducer, right? Because we're introduced, that person brought us in. But I don't list it here because the introducer we don't always, first of all, we don't follow the people, okay? If the introducer goes somewhere else, then we don't follow the introducer, okay? So that's why I leave that out, because generally the introducer, they might leave the Tao lineage too. So, okay. So practices, okay, what I mean by practices, other types of practices, Kung Fu, well, not Kung Fu, but Qigong, or other meditation practices, or these other types of practices. We shouldn't seek those things. Again, these are temptations, okay, that we should not fall for, because these are things, basically, it'll lead us astray, and ultimately, probably, we end up trying to follow some other teacher. Okay. We should also not contend for merits during this time. Okay, so basically, everyone just do your part, right? And don't try to especially we should not have I guess also this contending for merits can also mean, we're just trying to get merits, more and more merits, okay? For whatever, for some reason, right? So it shouldn't be that. That's your way. Okay, so there's a motive. So we should not be done with the motive, right? But we should also do as much as we can to perform true merits and fulfill our vows, especially and to ferry people. Okay, so during this time, within the constraints of being in our golden thread, we should do what we can. Of course, we can also help others, basically help other people, so that within that's in other Tao lineages, that's fine. Just like today, the two classes. The class members from different temples, they're together, learning together. That's fine. That's okay. But in the end, we go back to our own Tao lineage. All right. Okay. So to conclude, basically, calamities are a result of the evil in people's hearts. Okay. So basically, the evil and the sins that people have committed over the years and many lifetimes. Okay, so now the calamities are happening as kind of a payback, if you will, and so these are the end times. Again, everyone will be held to account for all their karmic debts accumulated over the past 60,000 years of this cycle. Okay. So the other thing is also. During these calamities, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas or saints or whatever, they'll all try to save the cultivators. But now, I didn't mention that when you take the vegan vow, you get a flag. Okay, this yellow flag. Okay, now most of us we don't see it, but the Buddhists, they can see it, right? So there's this yellow flag that we have, and so during the time of calamities, these great calamities, well, because a lot of people, death, destruction everywhere, and so there are a lot of people, and so who are they going to save? Try to save. They're going to save those people who have the flag. Okay, so they can see who has the flag. They'll try to save them first, right? So actually, the more yellow flags we have, the better. So the vegan vow is one flag. A lecturer vow, that's another flag. So basically, anytime we take these vows, we have a yellow flag. So that makes it easier for them to save us, right? So all right. So we must accumulate true merits and cultivate virtues to pay off our debts, right? We must adopt a compassionate lifestyle and ethic to avoid calamities, right? So become a vegan and take that vow, all right? So it's not just a lifestyle, but it's also what comes out of our mouth and what's in our mind, right? So the internal side of it, and also, our behavior, our conduct, our speech, we have to be careful of, right? Now's the time for the asuras and karmic debt collectors, right? They're working together to get revenge. So our mind, our thoughts are very important. If we have an improper thought, they'll take advantage of that. Establish temples if possible, at home, or you can establish one if you go elsewhere to pioneer the Tao. A temple is a sanctuary from these calamities, right? There's supposedly, there's this aura or energy, I guess, around the temple that they say is like this purple aura that protects the temple during the times of the calamities. And especially, I guess that would be useful when that final calamity hits, right? Whether it's probably nuclear holocaust, and that's probably you'll be safe in the temple. We can also obviously recite the sutras, the Maitreya True Sutra, constantly do that. And also, again, hold on to the golden thread. Don't run around different places. Don't be tempted by our senses too. We also have to kind of let go of this attachment to the self and the ego. Do more to benefit others. Then the Buddhas will help us, right? If we help others, then heaven or the Buddhas will help us. Okay, and also beware of the so again, don't fall for temptations. So that's why we beware of false Maitreyas, false teachers. They might appear and they might say, "Hey, I can, give you wealth. I can give you power." Then you should turn around. You should run away. Okay, so all right. So all right. Let's see. Okay, so I hope that everyone can be successful in you know, taking what you've learned here. Well, first of all, to become a vegan and take that vow, so that you know we can all escape or survive these calamities, these and especially that final calamity, and whenever that may be. And so, you know, I wish you all the best, and may the Tao be with you. Okay, so if I had said anything wrong, I ask the Buddhas for forgiveness, and also the corrections from the transmitting masters and the lectures. Thank you.